Conor is eager to return to the UFC, and one of his prime objectives is avenging the loss against Dustin that ended in his broken leg, and the two have been teasing the fourth fight for months now. Conor took another jab at Dustin recently, so let's take a look at their rivalry, when Conor could come back to the UFC, and how a fight between the two could go. First of all, let's look at how Conor is teasing his return against Dustin. Conor was livid at the end of his third fight with Dustin, screaming, "This isn't over," and hurling insults towards Dustin's wife, even as the doctors tended to the Irishman. In post-fight interviews and on social media now and then, Conor has demanded another installment with Dustin to put a real end to their rivalry. Even Dana White, the UFC president, said an injury is no way to really end a fight, and they'll run it back if all parties are interested and available. However, Conor is relentless in his jabs towards the former interim champion, and made an underhanded remark about his fourth fight with Poirier on an Instagram post. The former two-division world champion captured him throwing a nasty hook on the pads while training, with the caption, "Lethal Weapon 4." The major purpose of the post was to create hype for Conor's upcoming Netflix docu-series, the trailer for which Conor informed us in the post is just around the corner. This is such a classic McGregor move, throwing in little jabs at his opponents during publicity for business ventures, ensuring a higher viewership for whatever Conor is promoting at the time, and keeps him in the fight conversations despite being injured. Not to say Conor won't go on sudden, brazen rants on social media towards former and future opponents. He just kept it a little classy this time.
Additionally, when is Conor going to return to the UFC?
The last time Conor met Dustin in the octagon, he snapped his ankle and had a titanium rod surgically placed in his leg. A broken leg and post-op recovery usually takes around 3/4 of a year before an athlete can train. Even then, they have to be careful in the intensity of their workouts and manage them around their injured limb to prevent complications. Let's say you do that successfully, which Conor did because he's been out cycling and posting workout movies for months now. There's still the entire ordeal of shaking off the cobwebs and getting back into shape. However, McGregor has healed extremely well, walking around at a jacked 240 pounds and working out so well, in fact, that it's caused a bit of suspicion of steroid use. This accusation actually affects when Conor could fight again, because they're based on the Irishman's withdrawal from the USADA testing pool post-surgery. Considering how Conor looks these days, the speed of his recovery, and the lack of testing, it sure seems like Conor could be on the juice. Whatever it is though, once Conor gets back into the testing pool, it's 6 months of testing before he's allowed to fight. All told, we don't think we're seeing the notorious one anytime before late summer 2023, and that's considering he joins the pool as the year starts. Dustin Poirier is ready to go whenever, and he's way more active than Conor, so his fight schedule at the time would pretty much be the deciding factor if the fourth fight ever takes place. Next up, Nate Diaz weighs in on the Dustin-Conor rivalry. Nate Diaz is no stranger to trash talking, and while he may not be as eloquent and prolific with his social media rants as McGregor, nor as calculated and directed as Dustin, but now and then Nate drops a joke to let the world know he's watching and he is not impressed. As they have been doing now and then since 2021, Dustin and Conor were having a little back and forth on Twitter, teasing their fourth fight upon Conor's return, when the Stockton Slugger took a screenshot to reply, "You both get knocked out all the time," alongside a snooze emoji. It's only natural for Diaz to have disdain for the shins of other fighters, considering how it's seemingly impossible to separate Diaz from consciousness, no matter how hard or how often you hit him. However, it's a little unfair for Dustin, considering the last time he got stopped with strikes was in 2016 against Michael Johnson. That was 12 fights ago. Conor got stopped with strikes by Dustin and Mayweather, alongside a submission loss to Khabib Nurmagomedov and the classic tap-out against Nate Diaz himself. So we can see where that is coming from. Now for the featherweight fight where it all began. Conor's beef with Dustin has become their longest rivalry in combat sports, their first happening in 2014, and they're teasing another one for 2023, makes it nearly a decade long. Part of the reason the rivalry has stood the test of time is how much animosity there was between the two when they met in in the featherweight division at the UFC. Conor was just coming up, and Poirier was an established name in the division, a top dog. Conor wanted to use Dustin as a catapult into title conversations, and he did just that by knocking out the American within the first 2 minutes of the fight. Not unusual for Conor at that point in his career, but what really bothered Dustin was the extreme trash talk and insult he endured at McGregor's hands that completely threw him off his game. Both fighters went on their own journeys after that for years. We're familiar with Conor's double champ to boxing to losing streak story, leading up to his brace of losses to Dustin at lightweight, but Dustin's story was different. The Diamond fought a bit more at featherweight before deciding to move up a weight class. The added weight gave him a major power and stamina boost, allowing Dustin to go on one of the most impressive title runs the UFC has ever seen. He failed to capture the belt against Khabib, but stayed active at the top until Conor meandered his way back to the Louisiana native. Let's take a look at the two fights at lightweight. In a refreshing turn of personality, Conor was incredibly respectful and kind towards Dustin in the lead-up to their second fight. The two almost seemed like old friends who just so happened to be scheduled to fight each other. The story of the fight itself was just as different as the lead-up. This time, Conor was the one who was completely outclassed. There were flashes of the classic shovel uppercut that stunned Dustin a couple of times, but the years of inactivity and boxing training made Conor flat-footed, leaving him open to debilitating knee kicks. He just seemed unfamiliar with the recent evolution of calf kicking, and by the end of the first round, his leg was done for. A classic Dustin onslaught followed, leaving Conor unconscious on the floor. At 1-1, a third fight was inevitable, and Conor doubled down on the trash talk in a return to his featherweight approach. It didn't work. Dustin is considerably more mature now and much more skilled. He was outboxing Conor in the first before taking him down and beating him up in a potential 10-8 round. Before the bell rang though, Conor stepped back onto his left leg and his tibia just snapped. The fight went to Dustin by a TKO, or doctor's stoppage, as Conor insisted in one of his angriest moments on camera ever. Conor seemed to lose all sense of social nicety as he insulted Dustin's family and threatened to kill him, yelling at the referees as he lay against the cage with a broken leg. Because Conor didn't technically lose in his eyes or Dana White's, the talks of a fourth fight between the two immediately sprung up. Moving on, is Dustin really out of Conor's league now? This is a pretty contentious topic for a few reasons. For the side that wants to see the two lightweight face off again in octagon, the premise of the argument is how the last fight ended. Conor wasn't knocked out or submitted. It was a freak injury that has happened to fighters like Anderson Silva in the past. Their rivalry must end decisively, and there are some who think Conor looked better in the third fight than in the second. He was kicking way more, with a wider karate stance that checked Poirier's kicks more effectively. However good Conor may have looked when the fight was on the feet, Dustin still looked better. His confidence seemed to be even higher than in their second fight, allowing him to be comfortable and loose, catching Conor with punches and exchanging effectively in the clinch before taking the Irishman down. Unlike the second fight, he held him there and landed some pretty nasty ground and punch that had the referee looking really closely at McGregor. Moreover, it may not have been a freak injury. Inactivity meant Conor was training his shin. He got leg kicked to oblivion in the second fight and then heavily drilled checking kicks in preparation for the third. This isn't a sustainable way to build bone strength and endurance. In the fight, he was kicking Poirier really hard, and Dustin said he felt a crack earlier in the fight when he checked one of Conor's kicks. So, it may be that the experience and skills Dustin has acquired through fighting and beating world champions while Conor has been inactive have just propelled him to a higher level than the Irishman. Finally, which weight class will it be this time? It looks nearly impossible with how big Conor has gotten that he will be able to make the return to lightweight, and the Irishman has informed the public of his desire to fight at 170 pounds. Dustin is also a pretty big guy for lightweight and has also said he has no problem fighting at 170 back when he was in a back and forth with welterweight Colby Covington. If the two are going to fight, we're almost certain that the fight is going to take place in welterweight. The result isn't going to have any title implications for Dustin. He already milked the McGregor victories for his shot against Charles Oliveira. For Conor, it's just too hard to imagine he'll ever be coming back to lightweight, as the fighter's own expressed desire to leave the division makes welterweight the most likely scenario. That's a wrap for this video. Let us know in the comments below who you think would win if the two rivals fought for a fourth time, and when that fight may take place. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to subscribe for more MMA content.